Hello, this is Redbeard, and this is the first video on our Marvel Snap channel teaching you all about the best Pool 1 deck and how to play it. So we're going to jump right into it and start breaking down the cards. I'm going to go over the cards that I liked to run when I made it to Infinite, just starting in Marvel Snap after a few days, and different cards you can run if you don't have some of these cards, and how to optimize your play with what we're running here. So first card here is Ant-Man, who's got a power of ongoing effect. He has 3 extra power if you have 3 full minions, which is something that's going to be a little easier for us to do because we're playing some tokeny cards, a lot of 1-drops. We're going to be able to dump our hand. All the things we're playing, we're probably not trying to get down on 1 too often. A lot of the times, the strategy behind the deck is to skip turns 1, 2, maybe see what your opponent's playing so you can kind of counter what they're doing on the last few turns. So we'll kind of break down some potential sequences of potential play, but for now you kind of want to see which cards are important. And I do think Ant-Man is pretty important. He's probably the 3rd or 4th most important card in the deck. You're going to want to have Ant-Man, but you can always supplement a couple of these cards. You'll need Ka-Zar and you'll need Blue Marvel. Those are the only 2 cards you really need. And a lot of these you get access to early in the experience, so you can build the core of the deck without much effort. Second card we've got here is Elektra, and this card almost always comes down on turn 5 or 6. You want to make sure you're destroying something. You're going to face a lot of Ka-Zar decks or other Pool 1 decks, and you can basically deny your opponent's Ant-Man with this card. So people will play their Ant-Man on turns 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you just target that location on the last turn, and then you can deny their Ant-Man. It makes it very easy to win those locations. But what she does is will destroy a random 1 cost. So pretty nice little tech card, but it comes up pretty consistently, and the way to efficiently and effectively get it to hit consistently is to save it for turns 5 or 6, particularly turn 6. Pretty important card to the deck, but again, we can always supplement different things. One of the more important 1-drops you can have is Squirrel Girl. She adds 3 1-drops to different locations, and she'll make activating Ant-Man much easier. She synergizes with Ka-Zar and Blue Marvel, and probably the most important 1-drop. So let's try to get that one. I don't remember exactly. Some of these they give you for free. I think you have to open some of the Pool 1 cards randomly. Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is a good one. He lets you kind of bounce around on the last turn. You can move him if you've already lost a lane and he's already come down. It can be a pretty nice little trick to get out of a lane you've lost. And then he synergizes quite well with Angela, who we'll get to in a little bit. And we'll kind of touch upon why Nightcrawler can be more important then. We've got Rocket Raccoon here, who is in my way, blocking my text here. So he's just a good one in that you're always getting 2 power worth of, you're getting 2 power for every 1 mana. That's a pretty good rate. And, you know, if he goes off, he's a really powerful card. If not, he's just another card that fills a board, gets a buff from your Ka-Zar or your Blue Marvel. I think this is one of the cards that sometimes you can just throw out on turn 1 or 2 or 3 if you have to. What he does is he either high rolls or he just fills his board slot. I think he's probably one of the less important 1-drops. And same for the next one we're going to look at here, which would be Uatu. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I ran him a lot. He's good for tempoing out your ones early if you feel like you need to, and then being able to see the locations and you don't play him in a spot where it ends up costing you the game. He's not that important. You can switch him out if you don't have him. I just liked running him. It kind of got me more familiar with the locations when I first started playing too. And what he does is he just lets you see the locations while he's in your hand. So if he's in your opener, you can see location 2 and 3 on turn 1. You can start mapping out your play. Sometimes you can even get an advantage from that. Just throwing down a card on a lane that maybe cards can't be played on turns 2 or 3, and you can get them down early, and maybe you can get into a location you wouldn't have otherwise been able to get into. We have Blade, who is again another one of those cards, one drops that I used. He has 3 power instead of 2, so he's a little bit extra of a boost compared to some of the other guys. You really want to drop him down on the last turn, because you don't want to play Blade in the early to mid game and then discard your Blue Marvel or your Khazar. So you try to, he's one of the last cards you'll drop, turn 5 or 6 probably at the earliest, or if you can completely empty your hand and not have to discard a card, those are the times you kind of want to get him down. Jumping ahead, we have Angela, who's our only 2-drop. You don't really want to run a ton of 2s because they don't get the buffs from Khazar. Angela, I think, has actually been nerfed since this photo's been taken. Originally, when I was playing, she was a 2-mana, 1-power creature or minion character. And I think now she starts with a base 0 power, but I would still run her. You're just going to be able to stack 1-drops in her lane quite easily. You always want to play Angela on 2 if you can, and then you can spend as much of the game with as much mana as possible buffing her in the lane that you dropped her in. So cards like Nightcrawler, we mentioned, synergize with her, because you can drop Angela, you play Nightcrawler, and then you move Nightcrawler out of her lane to a different lane, and then you can get another buff. So you can play upwards of 3 to 4 cards in combination with Angela, which is another reason why you typically don't want to play anything on 1, because you want to stack your Angela buffs and get as much information as possible. So even with the nerf, I think she's a very strong include, and you'll run her for most of Pool 1, and you can probably even include her in a lot of Pool 2 decks. I see her every day playing in the majority Pool 3 cards now. So look at Bishop, who I do think Bishop and Angela are more important cards than the ones. You'll want to have Bishop or Angela. If you can't, I'm going to give you a couple of 2s and a couple of 3s that you can supplement for these cards. But Bishop clearly synergizes. You get him down on 3, and then you just drop all their 1s on 4 or 5 or 6 as late as you can. But he'll end up being, 4, 5, 6 power sometimes. So Bishop's very important. You want to play Bishop on 3 as often as possible to just end up with the biggest buff as you can, the biggest buff you can. And here's the old meat and potatoes. We got Khazar in the deck. So his ongoing is your cards have 1 power. I get +1 power. And we've built our whole deck around him. He's pretty much the best Pool 1 card. Captain Marvel's probably a tier down from this. It's a 4-mana, 4-power minion, 4 energy. And he kind of is the engine that the deck is built around. The games where you don't draw your Khazar or your Blue Marvel, if you don't draw either one, it's kind of like an auto retreat. If you have Khazar and Blue Marvel, those are the games you probably want to snap, as long as your curve, you can figure out your curve the first few turns. But if you're ever going like Angela on 2, Bishop on 3, maybe Khazar on 4, or you want to drop a couple of the 1s on 4, those are the games you want to snap early. You really only have to worry about Enchantress in Pool 1 against Khazar, so that's another reason to save Khazar or Blue Marvel till turn 5 or 6, and then you can separate them in different lanes, so Enchantress doesn't get both of them, and you can still win even when somebody techs something like that against you. So we'll move on and take a look at another sort of less important card probably to the deck. I ran White Queen. She's just a strong 4-drop. 6 power is a pretty good deal. The most important thing I think she does is she gives you information on what your opponent is doing. So you'll be able to see what their most important or what their highest cost card is. So if you're not exactly sure what their deck is doing, that's where the value of White Queen comes in. Not that you'll necessarily play the card you get, but if you're missing Khazar or Blue Marvel, you certainly can. But you kind of know what your opponent's doing, so you know whether to snap or retreat, or you can kind of try, as you get more experience, you can kind of figure out where to play around what their late game card is. So, I'm trying to think of what's in Pool 1, but like maybe something like Odin, right? You know they have Odin. You see they're stacking on reveal cards, so they're going to play Odin there in a specific lane, and you can play the other 2 lanes so that you don't you can still beat them even when they have their power cards. So Blue Marvel is probably the second most important card behind Khazar. You really want to have both of them before you run this deck. All your other cards have +1 power, so you just kind of you get rewarded for all the tokeny build that you've gone. Squirrel Girl, dropping a bunch of 1-drops, and then he himself, he drops a fair amount of power. He can buff your Khazar or your White Queen. Typically comes down on 5. And then maybe 6. Sometimes you don't have him on 5, but you want to probably spend all 5 mana on him on 5, and then you can play Khazar plus whatever 1s are hanging out in your hand still. So you can drop the Electra, drop the Ant-Man, see where you're going to be able to fill up your board and get all of your effects. The other decks that people are going to be playing are going to be trying to spend 2 mana on 2, 3 mana on 3, 4 mana on 4. So you're going to see all their plays ahead of time. And if they miss, then they're going to be floating mana. Typically, you float a lot of mana when you don't draw perfectly and you're not running a ton of 1s in Snap. So that's something that you can punish with this deck. And then people will see that you don't have a lot of cards played on turns 3 or 4 or 5. And in the early stages, people will snap a lot, and you can earn a lot of cubes that way. So it gets a little harder as you move farther in your collection level. But for Pool 1, like I cruise to rank 120, 130, like without much effort, without much experience too. So a couple of alternatives you can run if you don't have any of these cards. We'll go through those real quick. Korg, you'll see. You might have him. None of these cards I think are bad, and I think you can supplement any of these 1s, 2s, or 3s for any of the cards that you don't have. The Rock isn't super relevant, but decks are small, and there's a chance they draw the Rock. Denying them 1 relevant card draw is good, but he's still a 1 mana 2 power minion. That's what you're really hoping for when you spend 1 mana, especially in Pool 1. Korg is fine. We have Mantis, another card, 1 mana 2 power, and if you can just tempo it out early, or a card is coming down, then you can get some value. If your opponent played a card here, draw a card. If not, it's not the end of the world, because you're filling a board slot, you're getting a little bit of power, and you're spending all your mana every turn. When you have these 1s in your hand in your deck, you'll never be floating mana, and that's sort of the key. We have Yondu, who in Pool 1 I think is probably a little overrated, honestly. People value removing the top card of your opponent's deck, but you might remove their worst card and get them closer to their best card. I wouldn't value the on reveal effect too highly. Now, if you are playing against another Khazar deck and you burn their Khazar or you burn their Blue Marvel, then you can auto snap and you're probably going to win. But if you just burn something irrelevant, then he's still one mana, 2 power, easy to dump. You can always tempo them out early. I think those are the ones I would keep my eye on. In terms of 2s, if you don't have Angela, I think you can run Armor, 2 mana, 3 power. And a little bit of protection. There will be people running some destroy decks, and you can use this as like a tech against them. If you see them play a card they want to destroy, you can play this in that lane and deny a Carnage or these type of cards. So Armor's a fine card. I opened it up early and I didn't really think it was that good, but again, Armor's one of those cards that people still run, and it probably gets better the further your collection level goes, but can be supplemented for Angela for sure. You can use Angela. I use this as a replacement for Angela. Then we got Lizard, who's another Pool 1 card. Just a lot of power. So 2 mana, 5 power. He's the biggest 2-drop in Pool 1, and he's bigger than most cards in 2 and 3 that I've seen. He's still relevant, and as long as your opponent can't fill up the slot, then you're going to get a very powerful minion. And the value partially of Lizard is your opponents will play against it sometimes. So you can just drop Lizard, and then your opponents will feel like they have to drop a bunch of cards there to deny the power. And you can just play the other lanes. So it's kind of almost like a bait, and you're just going to be spending all your mana. And at the end of the day, he's a 2 mana, 2 power minion. You can still utilize him to, further your advantage. So Lizard's fine. We got Scarlet Witch too, which I ran. You're still looking for about 3 power from a 2 mana minion. And anytime you see a location that's disadvantageous to you, maybe it's like, I don't know, play a card here and it gets destroyed or something like that, you can kind of reset the location. More than anything, probably your opponent has a beneficial location for themselves, and you can deny that to them. This is a card you can save till the later stages in the game, turn 5 or 6, when your opponent may think they have the game won because a location is benefiting them. You can change the location and then they'll lose any effects they're gaining there. So Scarlet Witch is a card that I think in pool 1 shines a little more, kind of falls off in pools 2 or 3 as you acquire more cards, but we're learning the best pool 1 deck. So, and moving on to just a few more cards, we have Captain America, who you can replace Bishop for if you don't have Bishop. Your other cards at this location have 1 power, so we're going to want to play him in a lane where we are filling up our location. So with Ant-Man, we want to move our Nightcrawler to his location. Something you just want to keep, keep a track of is, you want to get 2 or 3 minions at least alongside of him. But I think he's a step down from Bishop, but sometimes you got to make do with what you can. And as long as you have the engines for a deck like this, you're going to be able to climb. If you can't, just call me up. I'll help you out. And then the last card here that you can kind of tech in, I think it's actually worse than Captain America for this type of deck, but you can run a Cosmo as a tech. You can kind of identify the Odin decks that are trying to take advantage of some powerful on-reveal effects. Sometimes they try to stack them in one lane and you can deny it. Sometimes you just get lucky. You just want to play a 3-drop on 3, spend all your mana, and you have a little shot of denying a Carnage or denying your opponent's Elektra or their Squirrel Girl, and maybe you're in the mirror matchup and you can deny some power from them. But I think this is by far the easiest and most powerful pool 1 deck. Easiest way to climb. You can take advantage of some extra ladder rewards. You get some extra gold, you get some extra credits, which will just help you unlock more cards and kind of have a more enjoyable experience. So as just recapping one more time, most important cards you got to have are Khazar and Blue Marble. So you kind of can't run the deck till you have them, but everything else is pretty interchangeable, and you just want to be conscientious of what you play and when, moving your decisions as late in the game as possible so you have the most information. Just wanted to break that down and give some people some tips on pool 1. We're going to be coming back with some more videos on good pool 2 decks, good pool 3 decks, how to maximize the most the most credits you can earn, the easiest way to earn credits, and kind of give people some guides on how to buy cards once you unlock the token shop in the future. But that's kind of all I got to say about that, and thank you for watching and have a great day.